My father died when I was 6, and my mother died when I was 12. After that, my aunt, who was the real sister of my mother, adopted me. As a child, I had a very difficult life there. My aunt was strict with me. She always scolded me for doing something wrong. If she saw me reading books in secret, she would beat me up. I was so scared to tell her about the book I liked. But at last, I did. She said, "You shouldn't read books like that." I told her it wasn't a bad book. But she just wouldn't listen. So, one day, after beating me up again, she took away all my books and threw them out of the window. Then she locked me inside the room. I couldn't get out until I ate dinner. That night, I cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I went out on the balcony and found all my books were gone. I didn't know what to do. I was crying as hard as I could. My aunt came into the room, saw me sobbing, and started laughing. She laughed so much that she fell over backward. She was holding her stomach. She got up and walked toward me. "You're going to be punished," she said. "And you'll never see your books again." She grabbed my arm and dragged me to the kitchen. She put a knife in front of me and told me to cut off my hair. When I tried to resist, she hit me across the face. I ran outside and hid behind the house. She followed me, screaming, "I'm going to kill you. I'll make sure no one ever wants to marry you." When I heard that, I knew I had to escape. That night, I stole some food from the pantry, and snuck out of the house. I made my way through the dark streets. I didn't have any money, or a place to stay, so I slept in the park every night. Every morning, I woke up early, and looked for work. I worked as a cleaner, a maid, and even as a street vendor. It was tough, but I managed to save enough money to buy myself an old bicycle. Then one day, I met a man named Tom. He was kind and generous. He gave me a job at his factory. He treated me well, and he never hurt me. I lived happily with him for 5 years. He was taken to the hospital. They said he had a heart attack. He passed away 2 days later. They didn't let me see him. After that, I lost everything. I had nowhere to go. I sold my bicycle, and I spent the rest of my savings on train tickets. I traveled all over the country, looking for a new home. I finally ended up in Kyoto. I used my savings to rent a small apartment near the river. I had nothing else, but I was happy. I had my own place. One day, I was taking a bath when I noticed something strange. My skin was changing color. It was getting lighter. And then I realized my hair was also turning white. I panicked. I ran out of the bathroom, and started searching for answers online. I learned that this happens to people who have been living alone for too long. This was the first time I'd ever felt lonely. I wanted to talk to someone, but I didn't know anyone here. I thought about my aunt, and how cruel she was to me. I remembered how she locked me inside the room. I hated her. But I couldn't hate her more than I already did. I searched for the name of the woman who adopted me, using my aunt's address. But I didn't find anything. I wondered if she even existed. A few weeks ago, I met a young man, and his name was also Tom, who was staying in the same building. We talked a lot, and he asked me to teach him English. I taught him every day. I enjoyed teaching him, and he seemed to enjoy learning from me. I was happy. But then one day, he left without saying goodbye. I didn't know why he left, but I was worried. I decided to look for him. I went to the library and looked up his name. I found an address and wrote to him, asking him to come back. The letter must have gotten lost because I never received a reply. So, I decided to try again. I went to the library and looked up his name again. I found an email address and sent him another message. I didn't expect to hear from him right away, but I waited. A few days later, he replied. He said he was sorry, but he couldn't meet with me anymore. I don't want to see you, he wrote. Please leave me alone. I was shocked. I didn't understand what happened. Why would he say such things? I kept thinking about it. I was so confused. One day, I went to the library to look up his name again. I was hoping I might find some clue. But I didn't. Then I saw a newspaper article on the newsstand. It was about a young girl who disappeared. Her name was Keiko. Keiko was a year younger than me. She was beautiful, and she had long black hair. I remember seeing her around the neighborhood once. I think she lived in the building next door. She smiled at me. I remember thinking she was really pretty. The police found her body in the river a few days after she disappeared. She had been raped and murdered. Her killer was a man named Tom. He was a member of a criminal gang. They found his fingerprints on the murder weapon. He was arrested. The police asked me if I knew Tom. I told them I didn't. They asked me again, and again I said I didn't know him. Then they showed me a picture of Tom. I recognized him immediately. I couldn't believe it. Tom was the young man I met at the factory, who was dead due to heart attack. The young man who murdered Keiko was Tom, but he deceived me using makeup. In reality he didn't die. He was also the man who taught me English. I felt sick. I didn't know what to do. I went to the police station, and told them everything about Tom.